Last night, the reeling.
Oh, Frank Dello Stritto.
Hey, Frank. Anthony James from In the Heat of the Night is here with us.
All right. Well, hello, Anthony James.
Good evening.
He can hear us through our mics. Isn't that amazing?
Oh, that is amazing.
Technology. But Anthony has a book out, Acting My Face. He lives in the town where you're going to give your lecture if we do it at the theater.
Okay, and that is not Medford, I guess, huh?
That's Arlington. The Regent Theater is in Arlington.
Okay.
And I was just saying to Anthony, the show that follows us tonight, Frank, is Reeling. And I was actually at Malden Access TV last night just to drop my show off. And the Reeling people were there. I've been trying to get them on the show here. Because they follow my show. They should, but they're so busy working and stuff, they just can't make time for Thursday nights. I'll have to do a studio show with them. But it's just kind of intriguing. A movie show follows ours. And tomorrow night's movie is what, Frank?
Black Dragons, March 1942. It maybe is the first movie about the war that was started filming after Pearl Harbor and came out in March. So it's drenched in the war atmosphere, but it's really a tale of revenge, and most of it takes place in Washington D.C. And I won't spoil the plot, but basically you'll find out early if you watch it that Bela Lugosi, who is the lead, his character is there to settle some old scores, and they weave the Pearl Harbor and the war with Japan on it. You'll hear the word Jap a lot in it, and so it's a poverty row, and I gotta say, when I watch these poverty rows, I always feel admiration for the actors or the directors who are working under such constraints. Usually the scripts aren't very well thought out. There's a lot of improbability and a lot of things you just don't buy, and this movie certainly has its share of those. But I think Lugosi pulls off a couple of good touches, and so does the director, William Nye. And again, you got to keep in mind, these movies might be filmed in a week, and which is why when television came in about 10 years after this movie came out, a lot of low-budget filmmakers moved right into TV because churning out something in a week was no challenge. That they had done that, and I hope you have a good print of it, because a lot of the times you get these old poverty row movies, but the preservation hasn't been very good, and so I have two prints of it to look at. One was pretty good, and one was pretty shadowy. So I hope you're able to give them a good print. William Nye, the director, I'm not sure of this. I have to research this because I just noticed this. He may be the only director who can say he directed Lugosi in movies, he directed Karloff in movies, and he directed Lon Chaney Sr., the silent screen star, in a movie. And that movie was Mr. Wu, and Mr. Wu was played by Lon Chaney Sr. And there is a scene in there I'll never forget, and I won't divert here because I know we haven't got all the time in the world, but it was quite effective. And so this man, when he had a budget, could make a good movie. And there are some nice directorial touches in here, but they're kind of fighting the low budget and the tight schedule. It's just something they had to put up with, and quite frankly, the script that needs a little more work.
It happens.
What?
It happens.
It happens. Yeah, well, I guess you guys in music know that as well as anybody.
I was just thinking of that when you said the budgets, and I think, boy, this record could have been so much more with more budget. It's true.
It's true. And Lugosi's 59. His salad days were the early 1930s when he was making horror movie classics. But the major studios have not quite turned their back on him yet, but they're moving in that direction. About the same time, I guess when he started filming Black Dragons, he had just finished filming The Wolfman with Lon Chaney Jr. But he has a small role in that, and he's about to start shooting Ghost of Frankenstein again with Lon Chaney Jr., and he'll play Igor in that. But in a few years, the major studios will wash their hands of him, and he'll be making basically just one poverty row movie after another. And when World War II ends, even that dries up for him. So he's entering a difficult period of his life. This movie is made by Monogram Studios, which is one of the leaders on poverty row. They have leaders in terms of quantity. They just churn them out, and Lugosi will make 9 Monogram horror movies over the next few years for them during the war, and then the market just collapses when the war is over. Whatever demand there is for movies like that, they just reissue old movies. The leading man, the romantic lead, I should say, is an actor named Clayton Moore. You know who he is, Joe?
I do not. Do you, Anthony?
Lone Ranger?
Lone Ranger is absolutely right.
Anthony James wins.
Yeah. In this movie, Clayton Moore is 28 years old, and he is
20? 20 years old?
28 years old.
28.
And he's been struggling to get out of B movies. His whole career has been in B movies, but shortly after this movie comes out, he will be drafted. So if you look at his film credits, he has Black Dragons in 1942, he has one or two others, and then he disappears for 3 years, and that's The War. And there's a lot of actors of his generation that you know, were I guess he thought he was on the upward swing. I don't think he was going to get out of B movies and poverty role movies no matter what he did, but whatever chance they thought they had at the big time was taken up by The War. And another actor in the same problem was George Reeves, who thought he was destined for big things, but then he went off to war. And they come back 3-4 years later, and they've got to restart their careers, and it wasn't easy for them. And of course, I gave those two names because these guys will become immortal through television. Clayton Moore is the Lone Ranger, and George Reeves is Superman. But had it not been for TV, we wouldn't remember these guys now.
We wouldn't. Tomorrow night, the movie is Black Dragons. It's on 9 o'clock on May 9th. Anything else in closing?
No, that's it. There's a lot more trivia, but I'll spare you that. So I will talk to you next week, Joe.
Thank you, Frank Dello Stritto.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Did you have fun, Anthony?
I did.
It's our little show.
It was a wonderful show.
And Frank's been really diligent about these movie reviews. So we've got a whole collection. He could put out a book. His book 4 could be all his reviews for WinCam.
Wow.
I mean, they're fascinating.
Wow.
He's really an expert, and he puts a lot of time into it.
Yeah.
He's down in Texas, but he's coming up here on the 26th. Again, I'll invite Richie and you, and I want to thank B-Cats, Richie Sarno. I want to thank WinCam, Dave Gauthier, Anthony Gamari for the movies. Joe LaRocca, thank you for directing. Marvelous job. Anthony James, directed by Joe LaRocca. I love it. That's Visual Radio. Reeling follows us. Views and opinions are mine and my guests and no one else's. And hope you had a fun time. Next week, we don't know. We might have a rerun, town meeting and all that. Good night.